Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. James Nichols here, Devils reporter via New Jersey Hockey Now, and welcome to this spooky Friday the 13th edition of the Devils Rink Report. Don't walk under any ladders, don't have any ice cream in your back pocket or anything like that. All of these all of these things are bad luck, and you don't want to do that on Friday the 13th. Um, Listen, the luck for the Devils can't get any worse on the ice, at least, right? I mean, um, you know, string together 4 games, 4 wins in a row, thinking this is great. Maybe they got a little bit in them, coming out of this Olympic break. Maybe there's gonna be a little bit of fight in them, right? And then a back-to-back loss is a goose egg to the Detroit Red Wings, and then last night against the Calgary Flames, a team you don't want to see the Devils lose against, even in the predicament they're in right now for the rest of the season. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later with my guest returning to the show, Pasha of Spit Chicklets. He will be back. He's probably angry. He's probably not happy with the way things have gone, just as I know many Devils fans are not happy with how things are. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what today brings with Pasha and how people are feeling. But largely, again, like I said last night, that loss to the Calgary Flames is not something that you want to see. But I want to hear from you guys about this too, right? Pasha's going to join us shortly, and we'll talk to him. But I want to hear from you guys too. So let's get it going in the chat. Producer Sean's going to throw up that super chat goal. So if you want to get to the front of the line, support local journalism. Listen, I don't want to have to ask this question every week, right? I'm not sitting here. That's not the main motive. It's not the only goal. We're here to talk. We're here to have a conversation. We're here to have fun. But you want to jump the line. You want to get to the front. That super chat goal is being made by producer Sean right now. And you want to support the show. You want to support us and get us to where we want to go and bring you more shows and such. That's going to be huge for the local journalism side of what we do. So thank you in advance if you do, and if you're just here to hang out and listen and contribute in the chat regularly, thank you for that too. We are happy to have you. So yeah, listen, again, that loss last night to the Flames, like, first of all, a couple different things, right? First and foremost, right? Obviously, Jacob Markstrom, 7 games in a row, right? He's starting his 7th game in a row. A couple of back-to-back starts in there too. It's not like he had one; he had 2 back-to-back starts in that stretch. There was a decision made by Sheldon Keefe, and one of the reasons he did that was because he said, Jacob Markstrom is a volume starter, right? A volume goaltender. He likes to play more games, and he likes to play, with as much equity under his belt. And listen, I get that, but when you're doing 7 in a row, I mean, for what reason? For what reason does he have to start 7 in a row at this point? Because, it's not like they're fighting for a playoff spot or anything. Their chances to make, the playoffs are barely above a quarter of a percentile. I don't even think it's that much anymore. I think it's like under a quarter of a percentile. So no reason for him really to start 7 games in a row, 2 back-to-backs. I mean, Jake Allen should probably get some starts under his belt there too. I mean, it's been a long time since he started. So bit of a confusing decision there by Sheldon Keefe. But he said, like, I thought it was a no-brainer to start him against the Flames, his former team, number one. And number two, there was 3 days off of game action in between their last game. So listen, I kind of get it from that perspective, but it was 7 in a row. I mean, if it wasn't going to be against the Flames, fine, but maybe against the Red Wings or anybody before that, I mean, give Jake Allen some credit. I mean, he's been the better goaltender this year. So, I mean, I don't know. Is that the active tank? I don't think so. I don't think this team is tanking. In fact, they probably are too good to tank, and that's going to be their issue the rest of this way. But that's the situation as it was before us. Yesterday, as the Devils drop a 5-4 loss to the Calgary Flames in regulation. The Devils have practiced this morning. No changes, nothing of note to update you on. Brett Pesce's still not there. So it's just business as usual, right? But it has been 1 week since the trade deadline. And we haven't had Pasha on in a few weeks. It's been like a couple months, 2 months, I think, to the week. Actually, it's been 2 months to the week. So Pasha joins me now. We're bringing Pasha back on of Spit and Chicklets and Game Notes here. What's up, buddy? How are you?
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a couple weeks, like I said. Wanted to bring you back on and just get some ideas off of your chest as both, a fan of the Devils, but also an analyst of the game, right? You're doing everything with Chicklets, which, by the way, congratulations on the continued success with you guys. It's awesome to see.
Thank you.
Um, but I want to start here, like, right? Let's start with the game last night. The Flames, who largely sold their best players at the deadline. Kadri's not there. Um, uh, Anderson's gone. The Devils are still a team, despite what they're doing right now on the ice, that have stars on their roster, all healthy. I guess from a hybrid standpoint of a fan analyst like you are, just how concerning is that loss to you to the Flames, who rank 31st in the league, whereas the Devils are a team who are not supposed to necessarily be where they're at right now?
Well, to be honest, I'm past the point of game by game analysis. Since the Olympics, I haven't watched any games. It's unfortunate that it's back at that point. I thought we were out of the territory of not tuning in, after the sort of whatever you want to call it, 2015 to kind of 2020 dark days. But that's just the reality. I haven't been tuning in. I've kind of been checking the scores and whatnot. So yeah, and kind of to what you said earlier, I'm not angry. I'm past that point. I was angry in November, December, January. I'm just right now. It's just disappointed, apathy. I'm just so disgusted with how this season's turned out. I'm just counting down the days till October. But to be honest with you, if Sheldon keeps behind the bench in October, I won't tune in again. He has to go. I don't care what way, how you spin it. Sheldon Keefe is a part of the problem. There's many problems. He is probably number one, if not top two problems. He's lost the room. He lost it a long time ago. He has to go. So, yeah. To answer your question, I don't really care about the specifics. I heard Markstrom was terrible. Whatever. I'm glad they lost. I hope they lose every game here on out. That 4-game winning streak. Whatever. Too late. Too little. Too late. It's going to give them a worse draft pick. So I hope they lose every game here on out. Get a good draft pick and flip that for or even trade the pick. Whatever. Just yeah, to improve the team.
It's funny you say that about the 4-game win streak, as I had talked to Jack about that. I said, amid that 4-game streak, is it hard to not look at what you're doing right now versus the standings and say to yourself, maybe we can go on a little run here? And he actually had a great answer. He was like, no, it's pretty easy not to look at that because we just lost 5 straight before that. So
Yeah.
at any given moment we could just flip a switch positively or negatively. I thought that was a great response. But you said it right. Sheldon Keefe is part of the problem. He has to go whether he's number one or number two. um I want to go back a week to the trade deadline. I'm sure you were keeping up a little bit with that, and you heard Fitzy's comments on it. Um, Nothing happened, right? And I know you said right now it's apathy, it's disappointment. Where are you at on, or how did you feel at the deadline when they did nothing?
Well, I look at it like I'm just glad Fitzy didn't make any like rash, like try and save his job moves. So from that, I think it's a positive. I think, yeah, it's interesting because I don't know what ownership's thinking. I don't know if they're just waiting until the offseason to clean house. And if they don't want a quote unquote dead man walking to be making big trades and kind of deadline decisions. So they might be punting some of that stuff to the offseason. I would have liked to see them offload a couple not so favorable contracts. Would have liked to see Dougie go, but I would imagine they're going to get better return from the summer when I would imagine he gets traded. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting them to be buyers. They didn't really have a ton of like pieces to sell per se. So it fit with the trend of who cares. Just I'm so beat down and disappointed and disgusted with this season. Just get me to October.
Yeah, I do hear that, and you brought up Hamilton. I want to touch on that quickly because we asked him about the Hamilton situation and we asked him about the Nemec situation. Let's start with Hamilton first. It was my question. I asked him, what's the relationship like there with Hamilton? Like, have things been mended since the public comments? And he kind of, answered that question with, I don't understand what the question is asking. What's the discrepancy here? What's the misunderstanding? Almost as if that never happened. Did you get that sense from that response that he was trying to almost say like that never happened?
That was a stupid fucking quote because it did happen. So he's contradicted himself a lot of times. Seems like he doesn't really like, I don't know if it's whether he just can't keep track of what the public line is supposed to be, but yeah, I thought that was a dumb comment. They did try and trade him multiple times. He blocked the trade multiple times. They scratched him, you know, you can call it for performance or whatever, and his performance was bad at the time, but yeah, that was just not yeah, that was not an accurate quote by him.
Yeah, it was strange to me for sure. I kind of, in the moment, I took a step back because I was expecting an answer, maybe not a happy one, but not one that made it seem like I was coming at the situation with something blasphemous, like it was made up. So it did make me take a step back and kind of rethink. Okay, wait, what just happened here? But that this is the most confusing part about the whole thing, right? Is that he says that he's not trying to trade. It was never even a thought to try to trade Dougie Hamilton at the deadline, apparently. But then the 22-year-old,
I mean, if you want to get really granular, it might be true that he didn't think about trading him at the deadline per se,
right?
But earlier in the year, going back to last summer, I mean, he for sure did. That's just a fact.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the puzzling part about it is that now you have this 22-year-old who has seemingly taken a step forward in his development. He's got 10 goals on the season. He looks like he's really progressing well. And not to mention, if there's one thing Sheldon Keefe is doing right, he's pairing him with Luke Hughes right now, and they kind of look really strong. That's the guy that he was shopping. That's the guy that he was taking phone calls on. That's the guy that he was trying to make a move with. And I could understand it if it is for a specific return at a top six forward. But where are you at on the Nemec situation where like do fans want this guy gone, or would they prefer to keep him and move Hamilton and try to fill that void some way else?
I can't speak for the other fans, but me personally, I want Nemitz. I think he's part of the future. I don't love his usage under Keefe. Maybe recently with Luke Hughes, but just big picture, I don't love his usage under Keefe. I think the sky is still the limit for him. It's been nice to see him. He played well at the Olympics. He's played well ever since, based on what I've seen online. I haven't really watched, but I think he's part of the solution. I think Dougie's obviously the one that needs to go, but if he can fetch us to be part of a deal for a Matthew Nyes or Brady Tkachuk or whatever, then I wouldn't necessarily be opposed. But I think if they do trade him, that's going to be one of those ones where 5 years down the line, you're like, "Fuck, man! Like we had this guy. This guy's logging 25 minutes a night, sturdy offensive guy back there." So yeah, I still think the world of Nemitz.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like that name came out, Matthew Nyes, like you just mentioned, and whether that was something active or just taking inquiries on. Like if they're gonna move him, it has to be for a guy of Nyes's caliber, right? Somebody of
Mm-hmm.
that age, and he could be a 30 goal scorer or some sort of top line powerhouse to complement a Jack Hughes. So, like I said, I could understand it, but it just does seem strange that this guy continues to take steps forward in his development and for some reason is always on the chopping block for this team. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make too much sense to me, especially with the recent development of how he and Luke are playing together. Because Luke is playing well too. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from him.
Yeah.
That's been a positive. So if anybody hasn't tuned in to the Devils because of the disappointment, and I certainly understand it. There are nights I'm in the press box. I'm like, this is hard to watch. One of the more enjoyable things to watch on the ice is how Luke Hughes is playing, especially with them. It's been a good development. They both scored last night, by the way.
Yeah, I would say like based on kind of what I'm hearing, like yeah, the only positives of this kind of end of the season stretch is yeah, Luke's play, Nemitz's play. I've heard Gritsuk's continue to look good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of just want to keep hoping these young guys keep taking strides because there's really not much to be positive about.
The last point I'm going to make on Nemitz though is the real awkward difference between an answer to him about what's his future like versus the answer to Arseniy Gritsuk to like what's a contract going to be for him? Is that something you're working on? And the answer with Gritsuk is always, "Yep, that's something we're working on right now. We want him long term. We're thrilled with his development." Versus Nemitz, where it's kind of like, "Yeah, he needs a contract. We'll see what happens."
Yeah, I mean, my only worry with Nemitz is like I can't remember who reported. It might have been Pierre LeBrun, but he said he's going to be looking for a Luke Hughes type number at 9 million. I mean,
Yeah.
that seems really steep. I think with the cap going up, in a few years, in 5 years, could Nemitz be a $9 million D man? Sure, that wouldn't really shock me. But like, I mean, I don't know if you can have Nemitz making $9 million next season. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is a steep price. I did. I don't know if I, if I maybe LeBron reported it. I know I did. That was something that
Might have been
I
you.
was told.
Yeah, maybe I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
giving you credit. Yeah.
No, it's okay. No, that's not what I'm saying it for. I didn't want to just speak for somebody else, but I know I did report that a few days ago. Just that I was told like, hey, with this negotiation, like his agency is going to start at the Luke Hughes contract and say, like, if you're projecting Luke Hughes to be a player that earns that amount of money, Simone Nemec is that player too. Like he has it in him. So, we will see where that goes this summer. It's going to be interesting, right? And the caveat to the Nemec conversation is he's offer sheet eligible. So they got to be weary of that, going into this summer. It's going to be tough negotiations, in my opinion, especially after he changes his agent to Craig Oster, who is a noted tough guy on the in the room when trying to negotiate a contract. But
Mm.
last thing on the Fitzgerald conference, you know, I for a while, was kind of saying to myself, I think he's just buying his time, just trying to get through the rest of the season. Like it's probably likely he's not going to be back, but I don't know. After Friday, I got this sense that he didn't feel like his job was on the line. And like you said, he didn't make any panic moves. And that was another indicator to me that as opposed to some people saying, like, oh, he must not have had the green light. I thought, I don't know. I kind of think he's being patient because he has a history of doing that and thinking about how he's going to handle this roster in the summer. So, did you get that sense from what you heard and what you're seeing about Fitzgerald? Because that's what I got when speaking to him. But from a fan perspective, like, what was that lack of urgency like when hearing that as a fan of this team?
The only way that I won't be banging the fire Fitzy drum at the start of next season is if he fires Keefe and he completely shakes up this roster this summer and is able, like, if he's just being patient for a big picture play like a Brady Tkachuk, a Quinn Hughes, or something like that. If you can make that happen, then I will take the heat off him. Hell, I might even issue an apology. But that's a huge if. That's a huge if. If Keefe keeps his job and he makes a fucking whatever trade, nothing, not an earth shattering trade, and we're back with relatively the same roster in October, yeah, that's not good enough.
Yeah, it certainly is. That's something that came up when talking to him about, last year they said they're not going to come back with the same roster, and they essentially did. I mean, at least the top six, right? They remodeled the bottom six, sure, but the blue line, the goaltending, and the top six was all the same. That didn't change. Connor Brown was a big addition, sure. You bring back Gritziuk, okay, and Cody Glass signs on as a permanent fixture. But aside from those depth pieces, I guess you can call them, although Connor Brown's playing top line now. Nothing else changed significantly enough for this team to take that step forward. So, it's going to be a tough summer. I mean, I had a conversation with, a couple of executives that I was saying, what's the motivation for an ownership group to keep a GM that, they know might not be around in the summer when handling a trade deadline? Why would that be? And it was a couple of things. It was, first of all, who's going to be available as a replacement in the summer? Do we know? Right? You might have, a Doug Armstrong available after, the Blues transition to Alexander Steen, but he's one guy, right? What if you don't get that guy? And you have to go into the draft, with a plan. You can't go in with no plan. And, who knows who's going to be available? Do the Devils want a first-time guy running the ship? If they let Fitzgerald go? So it's starting to feel more and more to me like perhaps there's going to be a Don Sweeney type ultimatum here, like either you fix this season or you're out type thing. And we saw how it went in Boston or how it's going in Boston. They're going to go back to the playoffs and they're playing rather well. So we'll see if that's the situation for Fitzgerald this summer. It kind of also feels to me like Keefe might be back because he said to us in January, like, we're in lockstep. We know what we got to do to fix this team. It's just a matter of being able to do it. So that's
That
just
would be
my
a
take
fuck.
on
That
it.
would be a fucking disaster.
It's tough pill to swallow, and you do hope that they can figure out, the right buttons to press here.
But
I mean,
if that happens, that's an ownership call. From my understanding, it's ownership that has Fitzgerald handcuffed in terms of firing Keefe. So yeah, I think the ownership, Keefe's taking a lot of heat, Fitzy's taking a lot of heat. I think it's time for the fan base to start turning up the heat on ownership because, yeah, from my understanding, if it was fully up to Fitzy, I don't think Keefe would have a job right now.
it's an interesting point because he's only in the second year of his contract, and I know he's got another few years left to go. So how do they want to keep paying this guy for not having to come to work? It's a I understand the conversation, but
Well, look at the
certainly
big picture. I don't know how much he's making. What is it, two, three, whatever million it is? You're losing playoff revenue. Like I don't
right.
know how much they make per playoff home game, but I'd imagine it might be in that million range or whatever it is. Like you're forfeiting that because you're not fucking getting any playoff games with Sheldon Keefe as your head coach. So they need to look
Right.
big picture. And I hate to say it, but like if this continues, they'll be approaching fucking Aquilini in Vancouver territory, where it's just like ownership's calling the shots. Where you hire these guys to be your GMs, your president of hockey ops for a reason. Let them run the hockey team. You just worry about signing the fucking paychecks.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I got one more here for you, Pasha. But if anybody in the chat has questions for Pasha, drop them here. I'm sure you're gonna want to hear from him, and you guys have some stuff to get off your chest too. So, Sean, if we have any, pull them up here. But the last thing I want to end on a good note here with you, just because obviously I'm wearing the United States shirt. You saw what happened in Milan. Jack Hughes. I mean, he was a superstar before. He's a celebrity now. But the thing to me, the thing that stands out the most is just the way Jack Hughes is handling himself. I don't know how many clips you've seen of him, talking in a post game or having conversations, whatever it may be. To me, he left New Jersey before the Olympics to go to Milan as a boy, and he came back a man. I mean, the stark difference in his approach to the media or to his teammates in the locker room on the ice is so different to me, I think I talked to Jack Hahn a few weeks ago, and he said this could only be a net positive for him to go after we were wondering, like, what are the optics here, not playing for the Devils before he left. Now, in hindsight, it's only benefited him so much. I mean, yes, he's healthy too, but just his demeanor and the way he's grown up in just a matter of weeks has been a huge deal for him and the Devils. That speech he gave, the game he returned to New Jersey, bringing Tage Thompson on the ice, and just really devoted himself to the New Jersey fan base after, let's face it, I mean, a lot of question about his future because of the Quinn debacle and what's going to happen. Just how you know I guess settling as again, a fan, was that for you to see how Jack came back and essentially grew up?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I'm so happy for him. Huge step, obviously, for him personally, and as a as a hockey player and as a person, he needed that. I don't think there's a player that has taken more shit than him recently, just for his freak injuries, not being able to stay healthy. People are quick to forget what a dominant player he is. Um, so I'm very happy for him. I think it was huge for the sport, as you can see, just like moving the needle with viewership in games. Uh, Having him, SNL and Jimmy Fallon and all that just brings more exposure to the game, grows the game. Um, yeah, very happy for him. Yeah.
But tell me this, like, when you heard that speech, right, and you heard, like, I'm so proud to be an American, but then he followed that up with, without hesitation, I'm so proud to be a New Jersey Devil. Like, wasn't that comforting? Because me myself, I'm not a fan of the Devils, right? I grew up a fan of the Islanders, and now I don't have a fandom anymore, right? I'm in the
Oh, really? I
game,
didn't even
and
know
and
that.
yeah, my dad's a big Islander fan, and I grew up,
I
yeah,
thought
I
you
grew
were
up
a
an Islander
Devils
fan.
fan.
No, yeah, I
Oh,
certainly grew up
geez.
an Islander fan for, I want to say, the first 20 plus years of my life, and then I got into the field, and the Devils were the job that came calling, and I took it, and now my fandom is on. I like players. I root
Okay.
for good players and good people and storylines and stuff like that, right? So um now I don't have a fandom, but hearing that from Jack and the way he held himself, his quick turn from so proud to be an American, but also so proud to be a New Jersey Devil, to me, that said, that's not just a PR thing. He said that because he legitimately loves being here with the New Jersey Devils.
that wasn't really comforting to me because I was never really concerned about that. I know fans like to freak
That's
out
good.
about everything, but
Yeah.
I know Jack loves being in New Jersey. You know, he's the face of the franchise. Um, yeah, so it was great to hear him say that. I love him pounding the logo after that goal, but
Yeah.
that wasn't comforting because I was never really worried about that.
That's that's good to hear. You know you're definitely more level headed than a lot of the people that we meet online. So certainly,
Well,
I
I
mean,
don't know about that.
I'll have to ask the boys at Game Notes. I mean, maybe not, but that might be news to them.
Yeah.
But Sean, let me get one or two questions here for Pasha before we let him go and get on with the rest of his day. We appreciate him doing this for us. At Jay Snow says, ask Pasha if Merles would be open to being a GM. If he, I heard he's an idea guy. Didn't he invent hockey? I think that's satire.
I think Merles would be very open to it, you know, especially it's very close to where he is right now in Troy, New York. But you know, I would hope he'd only take the job if I could be assistant GM.
There you go. We have any more there, Sean, or we're all set there? Pasha, this is from Corey Lanthier. Who would you move, Timo, Nico, or Brat? One needs to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Definitely not Nico. He's the captain, you know,
Yeah,
he's the heartbeat of the team. Definitely not Nico. I think there's a case to be made for both Timo or Brat, but it's tough because Timo, I think he has that muscle, he's that power forward that the team needs more of. So I'd be hesitant to move him, even though like it seems like just for whatever reason he can't finish anything in his tenure in New Jersey. So many
yeah.
chances, just can't bury. And then Brat, like I don't know. I mean, if it's the Brat of most of his career up until November, I would say no. But like to me, he hasn't been the same since Ovi rocked him with that hit in November. He hasn't missed practice. He's been playing, so like there's no reason to believe he's been injured. But to me, he just like hasn't been shooting the puck, and he's been kind of a shell of himself. So I don't know. I mean, if the Jesper Bratt of the back half of the season is who he's going to continue to be, then maybe him. But like you would have to get an absolute haul for him. So I don't know. Toss up between Timo and Bratt. I think though, like if they're both performing to the top of their potential, that they have a place on this team and in this core.
So let me finish on this, and then I'll let you go. And again, I appreciate you doing this for us. But I do believe that Pierre LeBrun kind of teased like, hey, this could be the summer that maybe Brady Tkachuk becomes available. Some things going on in Ottawa that maybe people aren't thrilled with. If that's a guy who again becomes available, who do you send to Ottawa? Let's pretend move clauses aren't a thing. Which one of those guys do you send to Ottawa in a package for to get Brady Tkachuk?
Preferably none of them. Maybe it's Nemitz and Mercer, a combination of picks, first, whatever. I would prefer that route. Um, but yeah, I mean, listen, I think if Brady is available, Fitzy's got to do everything he can to get him. I mean, he's his uncle after all.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like that's we know that he was interested in bringing Matt in. Ultimately he goes to Florida, but who better than Brady if not Matt? And that's the kind of guy that the Devils need. I mean, I was banging the drum for someone like a Kadri who went to Colorado or
Mhm.
Sam Bennett who ended up staying in Florida, right? They need guys like that. And Brady Tkachuk, we saw what he did at the Olympics. Obviously, we saw what he does with the Senators night in and night out. Like he
Mhm.
is that kind of guy, and they need that
Yeah.
kind of guy. So, and again, friends with Jack, obviously just went through the battlefield with him in Milan. So couldn't think of a better acquisition than
Mhm.
Brady Tkachuk if they can make that happen. But Pasha, thank
Well,
you so
maybe
much
Quinn
for
Hughes, but yeah, other than that,
well, that's true. I'll give you that. Hey, never say never. He's still not signed to a deal, right?
yeah.
Um, but thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate you and
Yeah. Thanks for
enjoy the rest of
having
your
me.
weekend.
Hopefully we'll
Talk.
be talking about more positive things next time.
Yeah, I think the next time I'll bring you on. We'll have to have some happy things to talk about.
I hope so. All right. Thanks, man.
Talk to you, buddy.
See ya.
There's Pasha. There he goes. Spitting Chicklets, game notes producer. Just un unwavering success for those guys over there, and some good people. So appreciate him coming on, and we roll. So let's just talk about man the rest of this season because, like I said to Pasha, like there are some nights now I go to work and I'm like, God, this is hard to watch. There are times where when I used to play video games, I don't get to play anymore because I'm a dad now. But I don't get to play video games anymore. But when I was playing NHL 21, 22, whatever, and I was doing franchise mode, I would get to game 60 and be like, all right, I'm going to the playoffs. I'm going to simulate the rest of the season, or this team's trash. I'm simulating the rest of the season, right? That's essentially what we kind of want to do here in New Jersey, just because, again, they're not going to make the playoffs. It's like their number to get to the postseason hovers between 1% and like 0.5% or 0.25%, whatever it is. Um, it's just brutal to have to watch night in and night out because it's just uninspired hockey. They've played a little bit better. I mean, that 4-game win streak again against all teams that aren't going to go to the playoffs, and the game in that mushy middle of wins was a loss to one playoff team. That was the Detroit Red Wings, right? So you see what happens when they go up against competition who is adamant and adequate, can go to the playoffs. The Devils just aren't able to hang. So it's a little concerning. Like, there are silver linings here. Like, Jack's playing great. Luke, I was mentioning before, he's playing great. Nemitz has looked real strong. Gritza continues to play well. Those are things that you want to keep seeing. But I don't. There's a lot that I don't like, and I'm gonna do this story in a few days. Like, a guy like Kovacevic, he comes back halfway through the season, and he obviously doesn't look like himself. He's got a lot of catching up to do, and he didn't have an off season really. He was rehabbing, and so there was no training. There was no training camp for him. So he's looking not like himself, albeit I again spoke to him in the locker room a few days ago, and he was like, listen, like, was I ever going to be 100% this season? No, like, it's not great. I'm still adjusting and stuff like that. So he's going through it, and he knows it. I do anticipate when we get back from this summer, I anticipate him being a better player for the Devils for sure. But I think even he knows he's not playing his best hockey right now, and he attributes it to acclimating to that knee and that surgery that he had. But there are a number of other things happening here too that just don't look good. I mean, you want to see. Brad had a multi-point night the other night. He's starting to turn it on a little bit, but they had to demote him to the third line to get himself back to where he was, right? Sheldon Keefe admitted, like, I had to match him up against third line opponents so he could get his mojo back. And, then he brought him back up to the line with Jack Hughes. So that was something that, again, and we continue to watch, Jesper Bratt try to figure out like his former point per game self because he hasn't been there. Timo Meyer, he scores a couple goals here and there, but again, he scores and then he goes missing for a little while. Like, you want to see some consistency out of him. Even Nico Hischier, I mean, he's been fine, in the other two zones, but he hasn't been lining up the score sheet like he has in the past. So these are all concerns, like, especially against teams where, you want to see them dominate against the 31st ranked Flames team that just traded Kadri and Anderson and have replaced them with, Ryan Strome and player X on the blue line. It might even be a rookie, right? Those are teams you want to see the Devils play against and say, okay, at least we still have something here. We have a base to work with in the summer to build on and come back next year and just be better. And they don't make that. You don't have a reason to believe that right now. And is it the coach, right? It very well could be, right? They've started to figure out here now how to put string together, and I'm going to pull up here how many goals they've scored over the last several games per game, but they've started to figure out how to put the puck in the net more than just once or twice a game and pull out a win. So you see here their last, let's call it back to St. Louis. Last 6 games, right? 3 goals, 5 goals, 4 goals, 6 goals, right? That's 3 goals against the Blues. That's 5 goals against the Panthers. That's 4 goals against the Leafs. That's 6 goals against the Rangers. Again, all teams that are not going to the playoffs, and they have not been playing well. They have key injuries or are, a shell of a roster that they used to be, but they scored 3 or more goals a game, which is something that they can't say for how they left off. 1 goal against the Penguins, 1 goal against the Sabres, 1 goal against the Islanders, no goals against the Blue Jackets. These are games literally right before that uptick in goal scoring in back in February. So, that was good to see, right? And then yesterday against the Flames, they still score 4, but they give up 5, right? And that's the problem. They give up 5. And, was that all on Jacob Markstrom? No, it was half on Jacob Markstrom because I think he gave up something like, I don't know, close to 3 goals above expected. But certainly the defense in front of him didn't play all that well either. They, allowed one too many rush chances. They could not stop the Calgary rush. Jonathan Beecher, who scored his second and third goals of the season and in his career, I mean, that is again like, oh, you need your first NHL goal? Let's go to New Jersey. We'll get that for you, no problem, at a discount. Like it's a bit it's a bit concerning, that a few nights ago, I forget the player. I think Dominic Shine or Shine, however you pronounce it, first NHL goal for the Detroit Red Wings in that 3-0 shutout. Right? It's again concerning trend that the Devils just allow these things to happen, under their watch, and these are things that you want to see improve, certainly, but the three biggest priorities for the Devils this summer, outside of perhaps finding a GM that is going to replace Fitzgerald if they go down that route, or a head coach. Again, that's going to be creme of the like who. It's not going to be creme of the crop. Who's going to be available? You have to see. Is it going to be like? Can you realistically say Doug Armstrong's going to come to New Jersey? He kind of already managed in a small market in St. Louis. Does he want to continue working in a small market? Does he want to maybe see what his try his luck at a big market where, like, look how much success he had in St. Louis being able to bring players in there? How much better success would he have as a GM if he went to a big market like, I don't know, the Rangers, if they decide to move on from Chris Drury and say, hey, we're the New York Rangers, come play for us. By the way, I'm Doug Armstrong. Like, those are things that he's going to have to consider for himself, that you have to say, is Doug Armstrong even like a realistic option for the Devils? And then if he's not, who's available after that? You want somebody new? Maybe. I mean, look at how good Matthew Darsh is doing for himself. Again, a bit of luck there for him too, stepping into, you know, Matthew Schaefer for nothing. I mean, he had the pick before he was even hired. Um, but again, it depends on who's going to be available. Same question for, Sheldon Keefe. Who's going to be available? Somebody I kind of wonder about still, because I do think that the decision when they hired Sheldon Keefe came down to him or this guy was Jay Woodcroft. He's in the NHL now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's just doing some consulting. I don't think he was officially with the Flyers. I know he was doing some consulting there with, I think, John Tortorella then. I don't know if he's doing that now with Rick Tocchet, but Jay Woodcroft is another guy I kind of wonder about. Like, is that a potential replacement? He did get, pretty far down the line in negotiations, with the not negotiations, sorry, in interviews with the Devils. Um, but again, that depends on, well, who's going to be the man in charge? Is it going to be Tom Fitzgerald, right? Because if it's not, then that doesn't matter how far he got, because it's going to be somebody completely new making his own decisions and did not have those previous conversations with a Jay Woodcroft. So we will see. But and outside of those decisions, the first thing that comes to mind is making a decision between Dougie Hamilton and Simon Nemec. Now, the thing is that this deadline, maybe there were names that are not going to be available next summer, right? So maybe that's why Nemec was being shopped. Maybe a Matthew Nyes won't become available again, and that's maybe the part of the motivation to shop around a Simon Nemec for a guy like Matthew Nyes. The Devils, from my understanding, from what I'm told from sources that tell me, did not want to move Nemec. They were just open to it for a bigger return. Now, this summer, Dougie Hamilton, the reason why it was so hard to move him now was because of that $7.4 million signing bonus that he's going to get on July 1st. Well, July 1st is going to come and he's going to get paid by the Devils, because that is the only option that is available unless they get to trade him at the draft, which I doubt anybody's going to do if nobody was willing to do it now. What's the motivation to trade for him then, when in just a few weeks you don't have to pay that $7.4 million signing bonus, right? So he's not going to get traded at the draft. I'd be shocked if he does. Um, but on July 1st, if you can move him out after that bonus is paid, get to keep Nemec, then you have a lot to work with, right? First of all, what are you going to get in return for Hamilton? Like, after the signing bonus, he's not due one in his final season of that contract, right? So they're getting him at just his cap hit, which, if you have the cap space, you could afford that, right? Maybe the Devils retain a little bit. I doubt it. I don't think they wanted to this time. But if it's a small number, 1 to 2 million with the rising cap, sure. If you do that to get the assets you need to either, one, get the player you need and in the top six, or two, use those assets to go out and get them, flip them for something, right? So they got to make a decision between Nemec and Hamilton in the summer. No one's going to trade for Kovacevic, I don't think. He needs to prove it. Like I just said, he knows that he was a bit banged up, still is a bit banged up, but working through it. Again, asked about the Dougie relationship. He says everything's fine. He meaning Fitzgerald. I tried to speak with Dougie Hamilton. he did politely decline that conversation and has not been made available since those comments went public about his potential trade and the scratch and everything like that. So we'll see how that relationship is, but whatever assets they can get for a Dougie Hamilton will help them towards the future. Um, After they sort that out, right? If they don't get one at the draft for whatever reason, because I don't know if they're going to decide. It depends on where this pick falls, right? Is it going to be a top 5 pick? Do they have the potential to get a Gavin McKenna? Do they have the potential to get an Ivan Stenberg? I don't think they're going to be interested in any of the defensemen in this draft. But if one of those two forwards becomes available, or sorry, not Ivan, Ivar. If one of those two forwards becomes available, maybe they hold on to it, and I could understand that. If not, that first round pick should be traded in some sort of package to bring you a Jordan Kyrou or a Jason Robertson or, like I said to Pasha earlier, a Brady Tkachuk. Because look, like if Pierre LeBrun is saying that now, it's not for nothing, right? Somebody either said that to him with the notion of, okay, this is a possibility, it might happen, or he's heard through the grapevine, like, we're not sure what the future is with Brady. He doesn't necessarily love it here in Canada. I'm not saying that's the way it is. I'm just saying that maybe that's something that came up. I don't have, the intel with Ottawa. I have the intel in New Jersey, and that's it. But I shouldn't say that's it. I have the intel for what you guys want to know, not what Senators fans want to know. But again, they if those guys become available and they can be netted at the draft for, say a package, yeah, like that first round pick, no problem. Just trade it, because the core of this team's not getting any younger. You have to figure out what to do with, the you don't need any more youth right now. You want to, sure, build a prospect pool, but you could do that in the second round, in the third round. Trade that first round pick, put a package together to get a legitimate first line winger for Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. Like, it's so simple. It should be so simple. And I don't mean it's easy to make a trade. I just mean it should just be so simple to say, I'm throwing that first round pick on the table. It has value. It could be a top 10 pick. Trade it. And lastly, if they do pick, you have to hit on that first round pick, because the drafting hasn't been great, right? Holtz didn't work out. Um, I mean, the ones that have worked out, you could say, are Nemec, are Luke Hughes. I guess you could say Dawson Mercer. I mean, he's, in my opinion, disappointing in terms of what they thought he could be, right? He does don't get me wrong, he does everything else away from the puck so well. There's no reason why he can't be the player that he was in 22-23. I understand that maybe that was a career year for him that happened really early, but like, he didn't do anything that is outlandish that he can't do now. Most of his goals were cleanup goals in front of the net. He's just not doing that anymore. He would score his goals in 22-23 when he scored 27 3 feet away from the crease, if not less. He's not doing that anymore. He's not a range shooter. He's not a sniper. He's the kind of guy who probably could put on a few more pounds, but get to the front of the net, win a puck battle, win a net front battle, and score the goal, right? Redirect the puck, put in the rebound, right? That's what he did so well a few years ago. He's just not doing it now. So that's something that certainly he needs to figure out, because if not, like, he's a guy who could be on the chopping block too. I mean, he only makes $4 million. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be the third line center, albeit, Cody Glass is a perfect fit there. So if you're not going to trade him, then keep him there. But I don't see any reason why he shouldn't just be a responsible third line center for a team like the Devils. Now, granted, he could go somewhere else and light it up and be a different player, but he's not going to get that opportunity in New Jersey. He's not a center either. He wants to play wing. That's what he said, and what the coach has said that he said. So, sorry, I have a fly that's in here. The warm weather is back, by the way. Yesterday it was snowing for, I don't know, a couple hours, but a couple hours before that it was 80 degrees. It makes no sense to me. Now I have a fly in here. It's freaking me out. Sorry, guys. I'm ranting a little bit, but again, Dawson Mercer, I see the vision with him, but he's not doing it in New Jersey. And if he can get you something that you need in return, and look, like, who knows, man? Like, did that gold medal in Milan change Quinn Hughes' mind on how much he really wants to play with his brothers and maybe come to New Jersey? Maybe it did. I mean, again, I'm not convinced that Bill Guerin's going to let him go. I do think ultimately Quinn Hughes ends up staying in Minnesota, but you have to wonder if at least, the success that they had together in Milan is something that they're saying to themselves, like, we could do that. Like we could hang out in our houses in New Jersey and stay up late at night the night before Stanley Cup and say, "Oh, what are you thinking about? Thinking about lifting the Stanley Cup after scoring my game-winning goal. What are you thinking about?" Say, yeah, same thing. Like I could see that being a realistic, like I know I have a brother. I think or when I was younger, I thought all the time about playing on the same hockey team as my brother and winning a championship. I thought about that all the time, right? Because we played hockey. We were hockey players. But he was too young, right? We didn't get to play together. And then we got older. We played a little bit of men's league together. It was super fun. We had the best time. And now we're too old and we play men's league or whatever. But again, like I never say never. I don't think it's realistic. I shouldn't say it's not realistic. I don't think it's a possibility right now. I do think that Bill Guerin has, a real tight grip on Quinn Hughes, and he's done a good job of wooing him to stay there. But if it takes Dawson Mercer, Simon Nemec plus to get Quinn Hughes, do it. Just do it. But that's my spiel. We've gone 46 minutes. I always say these episodes aren't going to be long. My wife is like, "Do you think you're going to have a long one today?" I'm like, I don't know. Always ends up being long. And we didn't even get to your comments yet. So we got a few. Let's get to the comments, Sean, and let's bring up. I think we got a few super chats. So obviously we start with those first. They go to the top of the line. Chat's active today. Love to see it. Thank you for coming, guys. A lot of you in here today. Really appreciate you coming in and supporting us. And before we start the comments, if I didn't say so already, if you're not subscribed, guys, we're so close. We're over 900 already. We're at like 910 subscribers. Get us to 1,000. If you hit the subscribe button and get us to 1,000, you no longer have to look at this sun in my face that I thought I covered up, and you get to hear me in your cars instead while you're driving to work and have something to listen to. And if you don't want to listen to me anymore, then why are you here? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for being here. But again, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, please. It would help us so much. Let's get to 1,000, and then we're going to be on podcast platforms. We're going to be on your RSS feeds. So please hit subscribe. Help us get to 1,000. Send it to your friends. Tweet out the link that we're live right now if you want, and have people come join us still if they haven't checked us out before. I'm going to go ahead and retweet the link that we're live right now, just so that people know, so people can come hang out with us and hear your questions. Let's get you on a live audience to other people, right? We also ran a poll. So we're gonna talk about that poll. Actually, Sean, pull that poll up first. Let's do that first. Can we do that? The poll was, should we, or maybe I don't know if we can. I might be talking out of my butt here, but the poll was, should the Devils trade or not trade Simon Nemec? And you could see it here in the chat if you don't see it already. It's telling me to vote in the poll, but I don't think I have the ability to do that. I don't know. I'll let Sean try to figure that out while I take your guys' questions, which I think Sean has queued up for me here. So I'm gonna get to the first super chat, which comes from at Steve_KS with a $5 donation, and I really, really appreciate that, Steve. You guys are the best for doing this. You do not have to do this, but you do it each and every week, and we really could not thank you enough. So appreciate you sending the $5. So I guess the majority, Steve says, I guess the majority of the team is prepping for golf and Caribbean vacations. What a huge disappointment this season was. It's funny that you say that, because last night sitting in the press box with Ryan and Danny and a few others, I'm watching the game unfold and I'm saying to myself, where is the urgency? What's going on here? And Danny leaned over to me and was kind of like, yeah, if you told me that they knew that this was the last game and somebody said, after this, you go home for the summer, I feel like I would see them running or sprinting off the ice, at the buzzer, because this is just, there's no urgency, right? And again, I understand that, it's unlikely they make the playoffs, and they know it too. It's not like we haven't spoken to them about this. We ask them, like, where you're at in the standings, like, how disappointing is this? And, how do you be better, right? They know. We talk to them every day and we tell them every day, like, this is obviously a disappointment, right? They know. But you still want to see them actively trying to, get better. Like, you got to build on something. Yes, there's going to be a summer of a couple of months in between now and next season, but you want to at least see, the base of like, okay, at least there's something to work with here. We'll get to this, after a summer of developing and getting better. In September, when we come back, at least establish a foundation here. Like, this is your time to try out new things, right? Try out a new system. Who cares? You're not going to make the playoffs. Try to be better. Try out different line combinations. Who cares? You're trying to get better. Maybe elevate a Lenny Haminaho or an Arseny Gritziuk, who did have a cup of coffee on the top line with Jack Hughes, and I thought it looked real good. By the way, he's back now with Cody Glass and Lenny Haminaho, which obviously that's a good line too. But give Gritziuk that top six time because I think they think he could get there. I mean, we're talking about a player who has repeatedly been talked about as a long-term option in New Jersey, which granted, yeah, I mean, he's been great. So give him that runway. Who cares? There's nothing to lose here, literally, just except for a game that at this point doesn't matter. What are you going to do? Improve your draft position? Oh no, like that's a good thing. So I would say give Gritzik that time in the top six, make these adjustments. But I mean that's what would give the player something to play for, right? Give him something to try out, give him something new. But essentially that's not happening, and we're running out the same lineup every night. That's not really working. So, Sean, let's get to the next super chat. Thank you at Steve_KS for the donation. We got another one from at Devils 315, another $5 donation. Thank you very much. Who says, I've said it many times, or I've said it time to time, for David Blister to stop being a wuss and address the media head on, even if he says that fans don't want to hear it. That's a good point. Fans do probably want to hear from ownership. I mean, how often do owners talk? It's really not much. The last time we spoke to him, was it at the end of last season when, or at last trade deadline when, he gave him the vote of confidence? That might have been it, right? I think that was it, or it was at the beginning of this year. I can't remember if it was the beginning of this year or the end of last year, but it's been about a year. I would think that we're gonna hear from Blitzer or yeah, probably Blitzer, at the end of this season, because it's going to be one of two things. Either it's going to be, we believe in Tom Fitzgerald, we're going to give him the runway to fix this, or it's going to be, here's your new general manager. That's the way I see it. I think at the end of the year you'll hear from him. I don't know that. I'm not reporting anything, but that's just typically how things tend to go in these situations anyway. So we'll see, but I have an inkling that we'll get him by the end of this year. But thank you for the donation at Devils135. Don't know if we have any more. If we do, great. If we don't, let's just get to some general comments, Sean, and let's send everybody on their way to have a great weekend. Actually, it looks like we got a lot to talk about in this chat. So you pick the best ones that we're going to get to here, Sean, and we'll talk. Okay, at Corey Lanthier says, I think I'm saying that right. Tell me if I'm not. Fitzy not trading anyone for at least some draft capital is wild. This team needs an overhaul from top to bottom. Fire all management and coaches. I mean, all is yeah, I understand cleaning house. I understand wanting to do that. Um, I Yes, I do think that you're right that he didn't do anything in terms of like helping himself take a step now toward the summer, which I think he should have, right? That's why I wrote like, look, I love Cody Glass as a player. I love Cody Glass as a person, and like not personally, obviously. I just think he's a great guy. Look at what Nicholas Waugh got for Toronto. It's a top 10 protected pick, but it's a first round pick. That guy is on a 9 goal pace, I think, maybe 7. Cody Glass is on a 20 goal pace. He's a third line center who, by all means, is more defensively responsible than Nicholas Waugh. Maybe Waugh has a bit more snarl to his game. Sure, I'll give him that. But you're getting goals from Cody Glass. You're getting elite defensive metrics from Cody Glass. That guy could have brought you in first round pick plus. It was a little wild to me. I guess wild is a good word for it, that he didn't even consider it, given the fact that he brought in Nick Bukestad, another guy who was rumored to, potentially be on the move again. I spoke to him right before the draft, and he's like, I hear the noise, kind of numb to it at this point. Like, I like it here. I would like to stay, but you never know. He stays, he hangs around, and look, like if the plan is to come in with, Jack, Nico, Glass, and Bukestad as your 1 through 4, great. That's good depth. But if it meant that you could go into this summer and get, draft capital that you were going to be able to flip for a Jordan Kyrou or something like that, like, wouldn't you rather that than just, the first round pick at the draft? That look, maybe the leverage is like at the draft, you know, it's a little easier to make a trade, but at the same time, there's clock, right? You know, when you're on the draft floor, how often do we see blockbusters on the draft floor? It's not really that much. So I don't know what the motivation was not to trade anything and get some capital for what you need moving forward. Um, it was puzzling to me. I really did think that this was they were talking about how this was a buyer's market. No, it wasn't. This was a seller's market. They should have traded anything that would get them something in return to take the next step in the summer, but they didn't, and they stood pat. So that says to me that again, Fitzgerald could be patient to a fault, and this might have been one of those times. We can't answer that question until after the draft, after the free agency and the summer trades go down to really assess like this deadline. Why did he stand pat? Maybe we'll find out. Let's call it July 15th. We'll see. But thank you, Corey. Let's move on. What do we got here, Sean? At SST6601 says, anyone shitting on Bratt for one below par season after 21-22 needs their head examined. How is Bratt overrated if he is picked number 162? Devils fans are the dumbest in the league. Okay, I like Devils fans. I think they're nice, but I understand the sentiment. Having said Bratt has to go, he is simply small. What's happening? What are we talking about? Okay. So I don't think he's overrated. I think he's properly rated. I think he's a very good player. Pasha's right. Like after that hit, he hasn't looked the same. I don't think he needs to be traded because he's not a good player or anything like that. I'm fine with him having an off season. Like everyone's having an off year this year, except for Jack Hughes. He just, had the injury thing. I'm fine with an off season. Like that happens to players for sure. Like I get it. If you're going to trade him, it's only because you're going to get something of equal or more value in return. And the Devils have the small playmaking, elite forwards. Jack Hughes is one of them, right? They could trade Jesper Bratt if it meant getting a guy like Tkachuk or Nyes or something like that, right? That's what I think. I don't think they have to trade him because he's not good anymore. Like, what's the point in that? And then you're not going to get anything in return for him that's of significance, right? And you're trying to win a championship, not even a championship. You're trying to make the playoffs here. You're trying to, take a step forward in this organization's development. So if they got to make the tough decision to move somebody and it's Bratt, it should only be because you know that you're bringing in a guy like a Tkachuk or something like that. So that's my stance on it. The fact I don't really buy into the whole he's too small thing anymore, but I do think overall, after speaking to a few scouts in Newark who are regular scouts for other teams, right? What's the problem with the Devils? And a lot of them will say they're too small. And it's not that they're not they're fast and they're skilled and they should lean into that, but there are also bigger players who can do that, and the Devils don't have that right now. So um that's one of the things that I think the Devils need to look at this summer is say, okay, we got to get a little bit bigger up front, get some guys to protect Jack Hughes, but also be able to handle themselves. Again, I know I keep saying that name, but like a Tkachuk. So thank you for the question. Let's move on to another. If Nemo gets you Nyes, you drive him to Toronto. And that's essentially what I was just talking about, right? Like if you can get Matthew Nyes, who's 6'4", 220 pounds and can score 30 goals in this league, yeah, he's not having a great year in Toronto, but who is? Like that team just did not show up for Austin Matthews yesterday after that gruesome knee on knee with Rako Gudas. I mean, somebody's got to step up there and nobody is. And it's just, I mean, Toronto has been, I feel like the Devils are Toronto South this year. Like it's just, although, I don't, it's funny because like that team's not playing for each other in that sense, but the Devils, they do step up for each other in those moments. Like that is something I am seeing. It's just for some reason they're not meshing well in the system. But yeah, I mean, 100% Nemec for Nyes. I do that all day. It's going to take you probably a little bit more than Nemec. Maybe you have to give up a Mercer as well and some draft capital, but I do that. I do that every day, all day. I think Matthew Nyes he's the kind of guy you should be going for sure. Thank you for the question. Let's move on. Devils Army for Life says, I seriously doubt that Josh Harris and David Blitzer can name 5 players in the Devils. I will tell you right now, I'm going to put this to rest. The Devils ownership is tuned in. They're not thrilled. They're not. They know what's going on here and they do want change. That's why I said, like, look, I don't think that they're going to sit here and make any rash decisions and say, like, look, Fitz, you're out. Like, we're going to move on because they need to also know, like, what's available, like, what's going to be, who's going to be the guy to come in and take Fitz's job and do a better job than him right now. Well, we don't really know because there's not any notable names out there right now who are, would be a rehire in the NHL with a different team, right? Yes, guys like Sonny Meta or John Chaika, they sound appealing, but those are, like Sonny Meta would be a first-time GM. John Chaika would be a second-time GM who hasn't been in the league in 5 years, I think. So it's you pause at that for a moment, and then you say to yourself, who's going to be available this summer that is a current GM? Like we don't know anybody who's not going to be in their role except for Doug Armstrong, who like, yeah, that would be great. Doug Armstrong, 100% you would love to have a guy like him in charge. Is he going to come to the Devils? Is he even going to consider New Jersey when, like I said, he's already in a small market with St. Louis? Maybe he wants to see how much easier his life could be as a GM for, again, let's say the New York Rangers decide to move on from Chris Drury. I don't know that that's going to happen, but, let's just play fantasy here for a second, right? Like, it could happen, right? And again, if Doug Armstrong becomes available, you have to make a decision and you have to try. But if he doesn't become available for New Jersey, then like who's gonna replace Fitzgerald? And it's not me advocating for Fitz to keep his job. That's me saying like unless you know you're gonna get somebody better, you got to be careful. Tread water lightly here because you don't want to put yourself even further behind. But thank you for the question or the statement. Let's move on. At Jay Snow says, call up some of the AHL guys, LaChance and Xavier Perront. Actually, somebody texted me today about Xavier Perront and said that he's doing real well in Utica. And look, like that guy, he had that short stint with the Devils earlier in the year when the Devils had a bunch of injuries, and I thought he was great. I thought that he was a little firecracker in the bottom six, brought that speed, was a really good forechecker. Like yes, he's another undersized guy who like again you want that size, which is why Shane LaChance is another guy who I like that you said that he should get a little cup of coffee here and take a run at seeing what it's like in the NHL. I think he had that one game, maybe two. um did he even well he had a preseason, I can't even remember. This whole season's been I gotta remember. I'm gonna look it up, but um, again, like he's a guy who you hope that, and I saw a little bit of it in him. Like he's that Kevin Hayes type. He has that size. He's got good hands down low. Yeah, he got one game this year. I could see him being a successful fourth liner. Like, look, who cares if you sit a Siplikov for like a game or two for LaChance, or even a Bukestad at that point for a game or two just down the line here. Like, let those guys. You're right. Let those guys get their cup of coffee in the NHL. Let them see what it's like to be successful here. I agree. That's how you have to develop the pipeline, and those are guys that I could see maybe at some point getting it. So, I mean, again, there's 17 games, 16 games left. I think now is as good a time as any, but other guys still do want to be in the lineup and get their reps. So, thank you for the question. Let's move on to the next one here, Sean. At Gurking King. I don't know. Sean will make fun of me about that later. Nemo sees attitude wise a lot like Blackwood. Um, that's interesting. It's hard for me to say. I think Nemo is he's a good kid. Like he's happy and he doesn't, I don't think he's in there making any demands like he needs to, have more ice time or anything like that. And, not saying Blackwood does either. It's just hard to make that comparison because there's a language barrier with one, whereas the other didn't have that language barrier. So like sometimes you say some things to Nemitz and he's kind of like, wait, I'm trying to process what is that? What is the meaning of what you just said? Whereas like, Blackwood didn't have that language barrier. So they were both nice guys. I mean, I had good relationships with both those players. Especially because like there were times where I had to go talk to Nemitz about some of the trade rumors and stuff. He was really good about it. He gave me good answers and stuff. So, I don't, maybe they have similar personalities. I'd have to be a little bit more conscious of that when talking to Nemo a little bit more. And I haven't spoken to Blackwood in a little bit. He's obviously with Colorado now. So, and playing really well, by the way, for Colorado. Thank you for the question. Let's do the next one, Sean. Another super chat. Thank you, Devils135. Another $5 donation. Really appreciate that. I think Doug Armstrong is staying in St. Louis as a senior advisor, and Woodcroft is an assistant in Anaheim now. That's right. See. I'm thinking orange jersey. Where is Woodcroft? Anaheim. That makes sense. Thank you for that. And Doug Armstrong staying in St. Louis as a senior advisor. Yes, I think that might be the plan. But there are whispers of like, hey, what's going to happen this summer with a potential shakeup for some of these teams? Might something really appealing come, across his desk that maybe he'll take that job? I do think ultimately the question in St. Louis for Doug Armstrong was like, do I want to keep doing this? I agree, but just from talking to some people, they were wondering like, could he be enticed to take a big job? Like, again, this is just me speaking, not anything I've heard. The Rangers, like, would they do something crazy like fire Drury and bring in somebody new? Like, who better than Doug Armstrong? I mean, again, Stanley Cup GM, and he built a crazy good rosters in St. Louis. He's a really good architect. So, but thank you for the donation. Let's do another one. Do a few more here, and then we'll call it a weekend, Sean. Except I got a game to go cover tomorrow, but man, it's gonna be a tough one. I'm by myself tomorrow, by the way. No Danny, no Ryan, just little old me in the press box. I'm gonna be all by my lonesome. Maybe I'll bring Sean with me just because I'm gonna be bored. He's perking up behind the scenes. Mr. White says, I want a Silyev Nemec pairing, but like I've said so many times, we have no direct and set plan. We praise Nemec, then bench him to eventually learn that he's on the market for a top six forward. That's a good way to put it. It is interesting. I mean, he hasn't been benched in a little bit. I'll say that Nemec has not been benched in a little while. But I do understand the sentiment. It's like, okay, we know that Nemec thrives in an elevated role. So when he returns from the Olympics where he's playing number one defenseman duties, let's just put him on the bottom pair with Brennan Dillon, which again, I know that's a good pair. They play well together, but I mean, look at what he does when he elevates. And, it's a confidence thing. One, he's feeling better about himself because he's being depended on more. But two, it's also about opportunity and getting more reps. And, it's funny, like I asked about that. Like, do you notice that trend that he starts to get more confidence in himself when he's playing more minutes? And it was kind of like poo-pooed, like, brushed off the shoulder. But that to me, like, it's obvious. You get more reps, like that's going to just lead to more good things. And yes, look, by no means am I sitting here and saying that Nemec is a perfect player and he should be on the top pair because he's not going to make any mistakes. He's going to be great. Like, no, there's going to be growing pains. But again, now when you're out of the playoffs, you're not in the picture, you're not going to make it. Is as good a time as any to give him that time, push him to the top, and let him see these minutes against guys like look, if he's gonna be that player, he needs to know what it's like to go toe to toe with a Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon. Like, you want him to develop, get that experience playing against those guys at those speeds, at those paces. Like, you have to have Nemec develop. And I don't know if they're trying to shelter him. Like, and again, I know I said earlier he's playing some minutes with Luke Hughes, and it looks good. I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying watching that pair. But it's not consistent. He doesn't play there the whole game. So I do kind of wonder if it's one of those things where they're sheltering his minutes just to keep his trade value up, to say like, look how good he did in this role. And he didn't make any of those mistakes that he could have possibly made, right? Like, if he has less minutes, there's less opportunity for mistakes, and maybe that doesn't hurt his trade value. I don't know if that's the motivation. I just kind of wonder. But if it were me and I was the GM or the head coach, I'd be saying like, this guy's an important part of our future. He needs to know what it's like to play against the best, and he's going to be on the top pair. Look, do it with Nemec. I mean, do it with Luke Hughes for the rest of the year. Put Nemec and Luke Hughes on the top pair for the rest of the year. They cooked yesterday. Again, it was against the Flames, and I get it. But those are you should have started against St. Louis when they played them a few nights ago, and had them stay as the top pair to build that confidence so that when more formidable opponents come in, they can continue taking those steps. So that's me. That's what I think. But thank you for the question, Mr. White. We move on. At Devils135 says, I'd like a Nico Jack new 3C Glass with Bukestad as the fourth line right wing. That's a pretty good that's a pretty good assessment. Like Bukestad could play the wing. 2026 NHL free agents. Now, I know Pajot is a guy that's not going to be available. Another guy who I need to pull up this player list, and a guy who I was banging the drum for too, in New Jersey that I think would be really, really strong down the middle would be Charlie Coyle. I love me some Charlie Coyle. I mean, he plays with such a snarl, such a bite, but he does everything else too. Like he could score if you need him to. He wins faceoffs. He's defensively responsible. Like that guy is a winner. That guy's a gamer, and he plays that Boston Bruins style of hockey that we all know that Ryan Novosinski loves so much. The wretched Ryan Novosinski. But yeah, I think he would be superb for the Devils in a third line role. I don't know that he's going to be available. I did hear that the Blue Jackets are pretty adamant on keeping him. But I mean, looking at other guys, like who would be available? Like I know I said Kevin Hayes is a comparable to names Shane LaChance earlier. I wouldn't sign Kevin Hayes now as a 3C. Maybe a guy like Boone Jenner. He was, a guy who can bring you some bite and play responsible minutes. Who else is going to be available? Like I don't know. Like I don't think there should be any desire for a Scott Lawton. He seems a bit too slow for me. There's not really like a ton of options this summer in terms of centers who can fill that third line role, which is ultimately why I don't know that there's going to be another center brought in outside of depth purposes. I think you're really going to be looking at Nico Jack, Glass, and Bukestad, and then maybe somebody they bring in like I don't know. Let's just say Teddy Bluger as a 13th forward, or uh, Colton Sissons, something like that. But I do think that's your 1 through 4 at this point, unless something weird happens at the trade deadline. I mean, at the draft next June, July. Thank you for the question. Let's move on. Got one or two more here. The results of the poll. Look at that. We figured it out. Sean figured it out. I didn't figure out anything. I'm just talking, yapping. The results are, if you can only choose one, do you trade or re-sign Simon Nemec this summer? Re-sign. 58% of you said yes, re-sign him. 42% of you said no, trade him. Interesting. It's pretty close. Not that big of a difference. But thank you for voting. Is that all, Sean? Was that our last one? Sean asked me on the back end, does Ross Colton get pushed out because of Kadri? That's a good question. That's somebody a few summers ago when he was available in Tampa that I said maybe they look into. He's a Jersey boy too. I don't know that he was necessarily working out as a center. That's why they brought in Kadri. They brought in Brock Nelson. I think those guys were more desirable, and that's like, look, that's the formula, right? Like the Colorado Avalanche are like I don't want to. They're the best team in the NHL for a reason because they have good roster construction and they have really great players. And that says to me that okay, they brought in Kadri to be the 3C, or I think he's playing some wing too. But they have Kadri, they have McKinnon, they have Jack Drury, they have Brock Nelson, and I think Colton is playing the wing. And I don't even know that he's playing full time right now. I think he might be some healthy scratches in there. But I do like him as a player. He bangs bodies. He's a little firecracker. I would consider a flyer on him, almost like a. I don't want to say he's like Paul Cotter. Maybe he's Paul Cotter light with maybe a bit more skill. His hands and his brain work, a little bit more in cohesion as opposed to Paul Cotter, who can really seemingly only do it in the shootout. But that shootout goal the other day, by the way, by Paul Cotter, filthy. And that's what he does. Like he has that capability, which is so frustrating. Like you could see the talent. But in a game, for some reason, he can't just put it all together unless it's on that shootout chance. But yeah, we'll see on Ross Colton. I mean, I would think that maybe he is available in the summer, at least via trade if he's not a free agent. I don't know necessarily off the top of my head, but I think that might do it for us. One more here from Mr. White who says, subscribe and hit the like, you bums. I agree, except you're not bums. I like you guys. Thank you for coming today to the Devil's Rink Report on this Friday, the 13th edition here in March. But I agree with Mr. White. Go subscribe. Like, if I could hide the bums part, I would. But like, go subscribe to the channel, get us to that 1,000 mark, guys. We really appreciate you coming out today, joining the show. Thanks so much to Pasha for joining us before. More Devils hockey tomorrow. Who are they even playing tomorrow? I should know that because I'm going to work. But they play, my goodness, these days are blending together at this point. Oh, they play the Kings tomorrow. Because the Kings are playing the Islanders tonight. So again, the Kings are playing tonight. The Islanders are their opponent, who are by and large going to the playoffs, and they're on this magical run, and they look great. But the Kings are coming in tired, right? They're gonna have heavy legs on the East Coast as a West Coast team. Like, tomorrow is a game, especially because the Kings are also not playing like lights out hockey, right? They got Panarin, great. They're not playing lights out hockey. That's a team that you should beat. In my opinion, on the second leg of a back to back, coming into your barn, heavy legs, West Coast team might be playing their backup goaltender, because I would probably start the starting goaltender against the playoff team. You should win that game. If they don't, I mean, nothing happens. You know, they improve their draft stock probably, but if there's any fight in this team, they win that game. And we'll see. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Devil's Rink Report. My name is James Nichols, Devil's Reporter via New Jersey Hockey Now, host of Devil's Rink Report. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. Thank you so much if you participated in the chat today. If you were a super chatter, thank you as well. We really appreciate those donos, and it does us a large service here in the local journalism department. We will be back with you next week with another great guest, as we are every week, every Friday at 3:30. Until next time, guys, signing off. Thanks for coming.